Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a real-world review of the Sony 400mm f2.8 OSS G Master lens. Before the game started, I wanted to get a little more comfortable with the A9 and the 400-2.8, so I photographed some of warm-ups. Now, I captured this image right after the guy kicked the ball, and I have to say it is so sharp, vibrant, and colorful. Just look at how sharp it is right on his face. Look at the colors in the background, and just look how vibrant it is. So the colors that we're pulling off of the combination of the lens and the camera look fantastic. At the beginning of the game, when the players were walking out of the tunnel, I thought it would be good to get some photos, but then the pyrotechnics scared the shit out of me.
Hey, holy shit, that scared the shit out of me. Woo.
I wasn't expecting the fireworks and loud noises, but I got a couple of photos. And then when the girl is singing the national anthem, I got some cool shots of her standing there with the nice pyro in the background. So don't forget, there's stuff to capture before the game even starts. Now this is a G Master lens, which means it gets more than just a G in orange on the side of it. Now the G Master lenses are meant to be sharper, faster, and they say future-proof, though they're only future-proof until they come out with the G Master version 2. Sony says that the 400mm is the world's lightest lens in its class when you compare it to the Nikon and Canon offerings. Now it weighs in at 6.4 pounds, and when you combine it with the A9 or other mirrorless cameras that Sony offers, it weighs 4 pounds, just under 4 pounds less than the combination of a 1DX Mark II with a 400-2.8 or a D5 with a 400-2.8. So this thing is pretty light. I chose to use flexible spot autofocus for most of the soccer game. Now with doing that, you have to manually move the focusing points to where you want them. But I also utilized the IAF because when a subject was coming down the field and I hit the IAF, even at a distance, it was finding the eye, which makes my autofocus that much better. Now I didn't want to use the lock-on AF, which is the camera basically moving a whole bunch of focusing points around, because what could happen is if somebody kicks the soccer ball, it might focus on the soccer ball, it might focus on a hand if somebody's hand is outstretched, or somebody's foot, and not give me the chest or the face that I'm looking for my focus. The way that this lens is designed is different than most other big-ass pieces of glass. Sony has been able to put the elements, the main elements of this lens, more towards the center of the lens, leaving a lot of empty space all the way out to the end. Now this is good because it balances the lens better for use on a monopod, whereas the older lenses from other companies or their current models make you feel like you want to tilt forward because they're front heavy. This is more balanced right in the middle, which makes it easier to shoot if you're going to handhold as well as on the monopod. We paired this lens with the Sony A9, which a lot of you guys know shoots at 20 frames a second when you're shooting JPEG. Now I chose to shoot uncompressed RAW, which gives me 12 frames a second. Now I don't just sit there and motor drive 12 frames at a time. The point is I like to get quick bursts of action because there I can capture the peak moment that I'm looking for. But on the flip side, just to show you what 12 frames a second would look like, here's a quick burst. This lens uses 3 fluorite elements, which helps cut down on chromatic aberration. Now, when I was looking at the images, I didn't see any issues edge to edge, and Sony says that it's sharp from corner to corner, so it looks to be that good. This lens has OSS built in, now with 3 modes. The first mode is basically for shooting anything. The second one is if you want to shoot panning. And the third mode, which is new, is if you're shooting erratic moving subjects. It's going to help keep the subject in the frame better. This lens doesn't use the traditional screw actuators that you find in older pieces of glass. What it does use are high-speed XD linear motors. Now these move back and forth like this instead of rotating like the old screw actuators. This is great for stills as well as video. Sony says that the new motors support the A9's 20 frames per second with constant AF. Now this lens is a white lens, so how do you tell the difference on the sidelines between a Canon and a Sony? And the answer is an orange ring around the outside of the lens hood. Canon has a red ring on the lens, and Nikon has a gold ring, and their lens is also black. One of the things that you get with a 400 2.8 is tremendous compression. When the subject is filling the frame, the background bokeh just blows totally out. But when I'm photographing across the field or all the way down the field, photographing the goaltender, you can see that the people in the stands are just about in the same amount of focus as the goalie. Now that's because the compression isn't as much because the subjects are at a distance. Now I don't think it takes away from the image. It's just still really cool that you can shoot all the way down the field, but I just want you to know the closer the subject to the lens, the more compression you'll get in the background. We had the good fortune of having an overcast day, which means we're getting nice, soft, even lighting across the entire field because we have God's softbox up above, making the light from the sun nice and diffused. But I was really hoping for some rain and thunderstorms because that would have really allowed us to test out the weather sealing of the camera and the lens, but also get the water flying up on the field, but that didn't happen. But other than that, overcast skies are perfect for shoots like this. If you're wondering what is the thing on top of my camera, well, it's an Atomos Ninja Star. It is a video recorder. What it lets us do is connect an HDMI cable right into the camera, going to the recorder, and capture the video that I'm seeing in my electronic viewfinder. This way you get to see what I'm shooting, you get to see the composition, and you can learn from what I'm doing. Sony offers two converters that they say pairs perfectly with this 400 2.8. Now I got to use the 1.4x converter as well as the 2x converter, and the first thing that you notice is that they're so much smaller than their DSLR counterparts. Now what happens when you put the 1.4x on and the 2x on? Well, the 1.4 gives you a 560mm f4, so you're losing a little bit of light. Now when you put on the 2x converter, you're getting an 800mm lens, now at 5.6 because you're losing 2 stops of light. So when you lose light, that means you have to bump that ISO up a little higher to compensate for the loss of light, which means you may lose a little bit of image quality.
This is hopefully going to let me get super tight shots on the subject or guys jumping for head balls. Or get nothing at all. That could happen.
Now I've been somebody who's been really anti-teleconverters in the past. Now the reason being is you lose a lot of quality, you lose a lot of speed, and you lose a lot of light. Now in this case, using the 1.4x, I think the camera and the lens paired really well with it to help me get the focus that I was looking for. It's not as fast as if I'm not using a teleconverter, but I didn't seem like I was missing what I wanted to capture because I had the teleconverter on there. It gave me more reach, it still compressed the background, even though it was at an f4.
Dude, I got the ball going right past his head.
What's cool about mirrorless cameras when you're shooting sports is you can pretty much see what you're capturing when you're shooting, which means you don't have to chimp through your images after you take the pictures. For example, I had the 2x converter on giving me 800 millimeters while I was focused in on the goalie, and I saw the ball go by as I was shooting. Now, because I have zero blackout going on in the viewfinder, I could see that I captured that shot, and I said it right after I captured it. One of my favorite shots from the entire game was captured with the 2x converter on the lens. Right after a goal was scored, the players started coming together, and I used the IAF to lock on to the one subject. And luckily for me, he's screaming one way, the other teammate screaming the other way, and I think that is a fantastic photo because it actually nailed the focus. But after I took that one photo, the focus seemed to miss on the next couple of shots. It's really difficult to photograph with an 800 millimeter lens, especially when the subjects are close to you. You can't zoom, you can't move forward, you can't move back. You're just trying to get your composition right, and you hope you get the autofocus point in the right place. Now for this case, I got one really good shot from the sequence. The others, they may be able to run online, but they're not perfect with critical focus. Let me cut in here real quick to let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. Now, I personally use Squarespace for jaredpolin.com because it's so easy and simple to use as well as affordable. And if you'd like to get a 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FronosPhoto. And then if you decide that it's for you, use Fronos Photo at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now let's get back to soccer. In my opinion, when you buy a super telephoto lens like this 400 2.8, you're gonna wanna shoot at 2.8 the entire time. So I shot the entire game at 2.8 unless I had a converter on. Let me tell you about the reasoning behind the settings I used when shooting soccer. Now, I wanted to get a faster shutter speed, which means I'm gonna pump my ISO up just a little bit. Now, in this case, I wanted to be at around 1/2500th of a second, 1/4000th of a second, maybe 1/5000th of a second. That's gonna let me freeze the action that I wanna capture to get the nice tight focus and a lot of the details that may be flying through the image. Now, some people may say, but your ISO is too high. Well, 2500 or 3200 or even 5000 ISO in this camera is not really that high, and when you get your exposure right on, you don't see any of those imperfections, so that's why I shot at those higher shutter speeds. Now, because this was a Sony press event, they brought out 15 or 16 other photographers to shoot with the A9 and 400 2.8. We also had to compete with the other photographers that are normally there to photograph the game. So one of the things that I like to do is try to go away from the other photographers to try and get a different angle. So the field is big, there are a lot of places to go, so my recommendation, if you're ever doing this yourself, try to go away from everybody else. There's 4 customizable preset buttons around the outside of the lens furthest away from the camera. Now, you can only preset it with one function. We'll use soccer as an example. Say I want to focus in on the goalie, but I want to have the other action going on where I'm autofocusing, and then it shoots back to the goalie, I hit that button, and bam, the focus goes back to that predetermined spot. So maybe out at the outside, you could use something like focus tracking or focus lock on, but that's for you to determine.
The photo marshal called us all access. Boom. All access all the time. Open 24/7 like 7-Eleven. I'm like 7-Eleven.
There's a really cool function ring that's been added to this lens. Now, it's spring loaded, so when you have the camera set a specific way and you activate it, you punch in 1.5x times. But when you do that, you're losing megapixels, so every picture you take is gonna be only 10 megapixels. Now, what's also happening is you see it happen right in the viewfinder, but what you don't see is which mode you're in. So it doesn't say you're in full frame or you're in crop. Now, it does tell you that if you look at the LCD, so I personally turned this off because if you really want to get closer, in this case, you could just crop in post and still lose the same amount of megapixels, and it would be perfectly fine. And if you decide to shoot video with this lens, you could also use that ring to rack your focus. So that could make it so that it's nice and smooth. You just sit there and turn it to the right and turn it to the left, and you're getting that smooth focus.
Wait, I think I pulled an eyelid. My right eyelid is, oh, let me check it. Yeah, your right eyelid's a little to the left. Water? Yeah, water will help. Thumbs up, yeah, he's good. He's definitely good. Oh, okay. I got my eyelid fixed, I'm good. Here we go. And, okay. Just needed a rest.
Now, one of the more difficult things to do with a prime lens of any kind, especially a 400mm, is trying to fill the frame and not have to crop. Now, all of the images that you're seeing from me are not cropped. Now, that's a personal preference. I know a lot of sports photographers love to crop, and I know that if an editor was to take a look at my work for publication, they would have no problem going ahead and cropping these images in to give them exactly what they're looking for. But the point is, try to challenge yourself to fill the frame as much as possible, because at the end of the day, the less cropping you do, the more quality you'll have in your images. Like most big-ass pieces of glass, you don't have the ability to put a huge filter on the outside of the lens, but you do have the ability to drop in a filter, which is at the very bottom of the lens, which is close to the camera. This means that you could put in an ND filter, a circular polarizer, and just so that you know, there is no protection at the end of the lens, so you just really have to rely on being careful and use the lens hood. Now, one of the things that I learned a long time ago when photographing sports is that there's more going on than just the action on the field. You've got the coaches on the sidelines, you've got the referees, and you even have people in the stands. Now, I didn't heed my own advice and I didn't photograph anybody in the stands, but if you are photographing sports, look for those super fans or kids or people having a great time and try to capture some nice shots of them as well. Now, I've done two other real-world reviews where I've shot soccer, one with the Sony A9 where I only had a 70-200, and the other with the Nikon D5 where I broke out a 400 2.8 as well as a 600mm f4. Now, 400mm is a nice range to capture soccer images. Now, there still isn't just one perfect focal length for shooting soccer, because sometimes you need a 70-200 to capture the action in front of the goal, sometimes you need something much longer, and then other times it's just right. But in this case, well, all I've got is a 400mm 2.8 and two converters to use.
Getting my hair picked. Oh, my train ticket. Thank you, Photo Marshal.
When this lens starts shipping in September, it's going to be $800 more than the Nikon version and $2,000 more than the Canon version, which means it's $12,000 US. And if you're in Canada, it's going to be 16,500 Canadian dollars. And because of that, I must say, sorry, Canada. Now, if you're wondering what camera is shooting the video of me right now, it's the Sony a7 III with a 24-70 2.8 on it. Now, out at the soccer game, Steven used both the 24-105 as well as a 70-200 on the a7 III. One thing I noticed when looking at some of these images is the details, the fine details like the grass flying or sweat flying that you get when you get your critical focus right on. It's nice and sharp, it's nice and colorful, and with the background being blown out because it's at f2.8, it really makes for capturing great detail. Now the game just ended and I had a fantastic time shooting with the 400 2.8, but the only way to determine if this lens is good is to get the images back to Philly and see how they look. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that all the gear that I'm using right now is in my Gear Vault. Now, if you don't have my Gear Vault yet, it's the best way to input, organize, and protect your gear, and it's absolutely free for iOS and Android. So head on over to mygearvault.com to download it right now. So here we are back at the factory to analyze the photos from the 400 2.8 G Master lens from Sony, and I want to remind you that you can download sample RAW files from this shoot by going to the link that is on the screen or clicking the link down below. So let's take a look at this image. Before we got on the bus, I saw these lights. I'm like, this is a good bokeh test, but let's zoom in on this bulb. Look at how sharp that bulb is. Let's go to the outside of the frame. Just look all the way to the edges. Look how sharp it's holding the sharpness. Focus, sharpness, edge to edge. They say that this lens is super sharp. On other telephoto lenses, you can see edge to edge, you always don't have that same sharpness. So this one did really good edge to edge. Bokeh looks cool, color looks cool, but that's to be expected with a lens that is this expensive. Now I know I talked about this image earlier, but I just loved the color, the tone, the sharpness. Let's zoom in on his face. Look at that. IAF all day long shooting this one. I love the way that IAF works. Of course, that's not about how the lens works, but in combination with the A9 and IAF and this lens, it looks great. Colors, tones, sharpness, love that shot. Now, this again from the side, even with backlight, was able to nail the focus right on her face. I was focusing right here. I probably had IAF. I think it could find it there. If it didn't have IAF, I would just move the focusing point because I knew where she was going to stand, and I could either do continuous focus or lock in on her and shoot. But I just love look at this, guys. Look at how sharp it is down here by her foot as well. She's got great ankles. Those are nice tight rolls. I used to tight roll my jeans when I was 4. Anyway, moving on to the next one, we've got some action. We got the guy running down the field, fighting for the ball. You got to remember how fast these guys are moving. One of the most difficult things for cameras and lenses to do are track those subjects that are coming towards you. In this case, I put the focusing point where I needed it to be, and it tracked them really well. That's a testament to the linear motors inside of this lens. So now they're moving this way. They can hypersonically move much faster than just the ring motors that go in circles. They don't actually go in circles, or maybe they do go in circles. I've never seen them actually working inside, but they're much slower. In this case, super fast. Now I can't tell you whether this focus is faster than the Nikon 400 2.8 or the Canon 400 2.8, but what I can say is I never waited any time at all for the focus. It just snapped right where it needed to be. If I needed to find something in the background, it nailed it. Something closer to me, it nailed it. So it moves really fast, and in conjunction with that IAF, the continuous focus is just mind-boggling. Moving on, we got a jump ball in front of the net. So with a 400 2.8 on, you're limited. So that's why at soccer matches, a lot of times people have 2 cameras, one with the 70 to 200, one with a longer lens on it so that they can switch to get more of the action in front of the net. But I'm happy with how this one worked. We got the goalie going up to try to punch the ball. Whee, I'm gonna fly, look at me. Is that Puma? Really, Puma gloves. And the guy right here, that's nice. New York. See, it does say New York Red Bulls. Somebody tried to correct me and say it was New Jersey Red Bulls. No, it says it right there. New York Red Bulls. You were wrong. You got the guys' backs. You don't always want to get their backs, but because the way that the goalie is here and these guys are off the ground, I like the shot. Moving on. Filling the frame as much as possible means that you do not have to crop. Sometimes you want to leave some extra room just in case a publication wants to throw this on the cover or something. It may not work well on the cover, though this would actually work pretty well on the cover if you put like Soccer Times behind him. But zooming in, IAF nailed this one. It crushed it beyond belief. Is it a little lucky that I was able to get him all in the frame? Yes. But also there's some skill to that when you're shooting vertical and a guy's running towards you. Having the IAF capability and the focus of this camera really allowed me to just really concentrate on getting the composition right. But I also want to show you guys this background. Some of you newer people who never shot film may be like, oh my God, it's so noisy. This is the background. This is at 2000 ISO. This is what film grain looked like. This to me isn't a problem. It's not color noise, it's noise in the background. But if you look at his face, look how far we're zoomed in, guys. Looks great. This is natural. If I blew this up on the big printer downstairs to 40 by 60 or 44 by 62, it wouldn't look bad at all. This background noise is, in my opinion, really nice looking grain. Moving on, I put the 2x converter on. You can see it's 800 millimeters in front of the net at 5.6. The reason I chose this is just more for the fact that I was able to, with the EVF, see the ball come across and capture everything right there. Now, that's not saying I couldn't have done that with a DSLR, because you are seeing what you're seeing, but zero blackout when I'm shooting. So I anticipated what was happening. I couldn't see out of my right eye because I shoot like this, and it caught my eye. It caught my eye on the frame, snapped it, got this shot. Not a great shot, but just wanted to point that out. Now, this is my favorite shot from the entire shoot. It looks like it's like this guy has two heads. You don't know what's going on here. It's like they're morphing out of each other. Focused, IAF, nailed it. Look how thin and narrow the focus area is. His ear is out. His eye is in. This is 800 millimeters, guys, at 5.6. That's a testament to the lens being able to quickly focus and keep track with the IAF. Awesome. But moving on to the next one, you can see not as good on that. It just happened. I missed it. I'm still at 1/2000th of a second, f5.6 at ISO 5000, but the focus, no, it's not really, I can't really tell where this one is hitting. It may have moved to this guy's back. I mean, that looks like it's pretty in. In all honesty, if this was going to go on social media or the web, most people wouldn't know the difference, but I just wanted to show you that it's not going to be perfect every time. Again, shooting at 800 millimeters, super narrow, super tight, not the easiest thing to do. From a distance, you've got the no teleconverter. This is just straight 400, getting the action in front of the net. But what I want to show you with this is, like I mentioned earlier, the background isn't as compressed because you're super far away from the subjects. So you can still see all of these people in the crowd watching what's going on. I mean, she's like, oh, she's going, oh, that's what she's saying. This guy's praying, please don't be a goal, please don't be a goal. But I'm getting all the way up to the corner for a reason. Look at the edge-to-edge sharpness. I probably should have done a photo where I shot these people, photographed them in the background just to see edge-to-edge, but I didn't really think about it. But you can see edge-to-edge, really, really nice. Moving on, we got this goalie right in front, just looking for the action. IAF, nailed it here, got the action sequence, got a bunch of shots in a row of the guy shooting. He missed the net, he didn't score. Now this is with the 1.4 converter. You can look at the coach. He's sharp, IAF all day for this. Background, again, we're at 4000 ISO. This is fine, this is grain, this is what it looks like, but the focus is right on the coach. We're zoomed in 1:1, super clean, super sharp, nice contrast all the way across, sharpness. Really nice job right there. Moving to the last couple, 1.4 all the way across the field, getting that peak action with a bunch of people popping up into the air, getting the head ball, nailed it. I'm gonna zoom in because this one is so sharp. Look at that. Yeah, not much else to say there. And finally, just capturing the guy up in the air for a sequence. As I showed you earlier, I tracked this subject for 12 shots, and everything looked really good with this. So the big question is, who is this lens for? Well, of course, it's a very limited market. It's $12,000, not to mention that you need to buy the 2X and the 1.4 converter, so you're adding a lot more money there. But this is for agencies to buy, the Getty Images, the Sports Illustrated photographers, the people that are shooting the Olympics. This is the big piece of glass that they've been waiting for, but it comes at a price. Not a lot of everyday people are going to purchase this, but if you need to rent it, that may be something that you can do. If you can't afford it, you can save some money, rent it, use it for a job if you have it and get paid, and that may be the best option for a lot of people out there. So at the end of the day, this is a fantastic lens, and I didn't expect anything other than a fantastic lens because Sony spent a lot of time, did a lot of research into making this lens what they needed to make it, and it is expensive. So not a lot of people are going to buy it. but of course it passes the sniff test. It was awesome to shoot with, and if you want to download the raw files, you can download them and see for yourself whether or not you like it. But if you're going to buy it, use one of my affiliate links so I can get credit for that, because that really helps out. So that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. Don't forget to give this a thumbs up if you want to see more real-world reviews. Give it some thumbs up. Give it some love in the comments. Be sure to share it. And if you want to check out a real-world review of the Sony A9 that we did at another soccer game, go ahead and click up on the screen right here. And that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.